Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Mitch Higashi, Senior Vice President of HEOR at GeneDx, and I'm also a co-chair for the ISPOR Program Committee for our annual meeting in Boston in May. And I can tell you that we in the HEOR community are very interested in this topic. And so we are very excited to present to you this webinar discussion titled ChatGPT and Generative AI, Paradigm Shift in Healthcare and Biopharma. And we have a great lineup of speakers and topics planned for you today. So before we get started, let me take a moment to go over some housekeeping items. If you have any technical issues during the webinar, please let us know in the Q&A. Our team will be happy to assist you in real time. And also, we really encourage this to be a discussion. So please don't be shy. If you have any question, no matter how minor you may think it is, or a challenge or an issue that you are dealing with as we navigate this new era of natural language and large language models, we really encourage you to submit a question. As I said, any question is not too small and not too big. So please do that as we go through the Q&A. And finally, this webinar will be recorded and made available to all attendees after the event. We are all here in the spirit of a scientific discussion. We are all interested in understanding how this new technology can augment, potentially disrupt, or even distract our various fields. And so as we're all coming together here in the spirit of open learning and a scientific dialogue, we are sharing with you our disclosures and a reminder that the views that we express today are our own and do not necessarily reflect the views of our employers. Now, let's get started. We have the highlights that we've laid out for you today, the evolution of large language models and ChatGPT, and trying to understand what impact it will have on natural language processing, the opportunities for ChatGPT in healthcare research and in the biopharma industry, digital innovation solutions with large language models, and thinking beyond ChatGPT. We're hoping to have a nice Q&A discussion at the end. We'll be happy to take all of your questions and ideas, do our best to deliberate on it, and encourage you to share your ideas too. So on to our first speaker. And please welcome our first speaker, Dr. Jing-Cheng Du, Director of NLP Research at NELX Tech and an adjunct assistant professor at UT Houston. Dr. Du is an experienced professional specializing in leading the implementation of NLP AI solutions in the life sciences. He also offers expert guidance on implementation of NLP AI and its best practices in leading global pharma companies. As a researcher in biomedical NLP, he has made significant contributions to the field and authored over 60 peer-reviewed papers, cited over 1,400 times. So Dr. Du, over to you.
Thanks, Mitch. Also, thanks all the attendees who joined the call today. So I'm honored to kick off the agenda for today's webinar. It's always be challenging as a first speaker to kick off the content, but I hope I can bring the excitement to the group. So it's indeed a very exciting moment in AI. The ChatGPT, if you are familiar, is an AI chatbot. It was released last November 13, so about 3 months old, but it's actually crossed 1 million users within just 5 days and reached 100 million users just within 2 months. It's the fastest growing applications in the history. So people are impressed of the capacity of ChatGPT. And many media people starting to wonder whether this is a real start of AI revolution. So all of a sudden, even for those big tech companies who claim to be the AI company all the time, started to realize there could be a new gold rush in AI. So why ChatGPT is so viral? It's just to help everyone, no matter what industry you are in, what type of project you have been working on. There's always a way that you can benefit from ChatGPT. If you are a data scientist, ChatGPT can help you with the coding debugging. If you are doing the creative projects, ChatGPT can help you to draft the poetry, stories, and also generate the video script. And it can help you write an email, summarize all the information from the paper, from the lot of web news. and also help you with all the marketing. It provides the detailed response and articulate the answers across many domains of knowledge. So when is the last time you have seen a consumer product like this? Especially for healthcare and life science. This is actually a recent peer-reviewed article that shows ChatGPT perform 8 or near the passing threshold for all 3 exams without any training in US MLE. So it's for the United States Medical License Examination, which shows that ChatGPT has strong clinical knowledge and has great potential on clinical decision-making. Some technical background of the ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a part of a category, what we call larger language model. Larger language model also sometimes called a foundation model. This kind of model have billions of trainable parameters, and it will typically train on the data set at the terabytes level. And what is unique of those foundation model is that just using one model with what we call a prompt is actually a natural language description of the task. It can perform a wide range of downstream tasks. Why we need a model at this scale with billions of parameters? This is actually a very interesting animation from a language model generated by Google. They actually build a variety of models at a different scale. As you can see here, as the parameter grows, the model keeps gaining the new capacity for additional downstream tasks. This is actually called an emergent phenomenon. So, which means that those capacity was not specifically trained during the training process, but it just have the capacity when the model grows at a certain scale. And the research also find that the emergent phenomenon is not just for one model. Actually, for some major language models, they are the same phenomenon. And even they have different model structure or following different training strategy. Just at a certain scale, this model just masters those skills in mathematics, natural language understanding, or now explain the word in the context dramatically at a certain level. So there's many language models, larger language model available. Why ChatGPT is different? First, it's a trend on it's one of the biggest larger language model ever with 1 billion parameters. We're trained on all the type of documents, and the size of the training data is at a billion scale and support a variety of languages. And the one unique feature of the training process, different from other language model, is they actually follow a process called reinforcement learning from human feedback. So we don't have to go to details of this technology. Basically, in addition to the unsupervised pre-training process, it actually involves the human to review to the ChatGPT output and also provide feedback to the model. So the model can better understand the human intention. Put a simple word, the ChatGPT different from other language model because it can understand the human question, the prompt more easily and better. So you don't have to be trained prompt engineer to let ChatGPT to answer your specific question. You can always easily to get the answer which you want. So how does the ChatGPT can change the development cycle? This is also going to be the major focuses of today's discussion. For the NLP scientists in the audience, probably you're already familiar with this kind of what we call fine-tune based NLP development life cycle. For a typical task-specific NLP project, people always start with some information model, which defines the elements and also the relationship you want to extract from the textual data. And then you start with some data annotation and evaluation, training of the machine learning, deep learning algorithm, to the algorithm selection, post-processing to add a certain rule dictionary on top of the machine learning results, and also followed by evaluation, performance of the algorithm, and also have domain expert to check the results. And this also could be an iterative process, which means that you could go it several times until you achieve the satisfying results. This is a very good practice to achieve pretty good performance on many NLP tasks. But the challenge here is a quite time-consuming and labor-intensive process. And in addition to the fine-tuning process of the NLP development, there's a few other NLP practices available. One particular is called field-shot learning. The difference between fine-tuning is that you don't have to provide all the tens of thousands of label data. You can actually give the model just a few examples with labels. and the model can make pretty good prediction. And a special category called subcategory of few-shot learning called one-shot learning, basically just provide one example. And zero-shot learning is even more simple. You just provide a natural language description of a task, and the model can do the prediction automatically. As NLP practitioners, we always want the few-shot learning or zero-shot learning because it can dramatically shorten the NLP development work cycle. Very simple, straightforward example to show the audience how the ChatGPT has a great potential to shift the fine-tuning NLP development process to a few-shot or zero-shot learning process. This is actually a feather from the project I've been working on. I was working on since the starting of my PhD. The goal here is very clear. So we want to generate a timeline of clinical events from the post-marketing safety report. This is a very straightforward project. But in order to do that, we need to first build an LP pipeline for the extraction of all the clinical events, like a vaccination, adverse event, hospitalization, symptom, treatment, etc. We also need to build an LP pipeline for the temporal extraction, LP pipeline for the temporal relation extraction to highlight the relationship between the timestamp versus the clinical events, and also normalize those temporal extraction and generate timeline. This is a very comprehensive kind of workflow for this project. And there's certainly a lot of cost for the project. We need to hire annotators with a medical background for the months of annotation. And we need to have NLP scientists for the model training, evaluation, pipeline integration, and also domain expert to review the results. This is the results from ChatGPT. So on the left side, you see the whole report, pretty comprehensive. On the right side, you just need to give the ChatGPT one simple prompt. Extract the clinical event and timestamp in a table format. Sorted the clinical event in a ascending order. And then you have all the clinical events extracted here, and also the timestamp, and it's done the sort already. So that's pretty remarkable and also pretty shocking for many of our LP users here. So that's conclude my part. I just give a brief flavor of the ChatGPT.
Wonderful, Dr. Du. Thank you so much. I hope we get some good discussion at the end around fine-tuning and the annotation and what this means for our field. And so now let's move on to our next speaker. Please welcome Dr. Yanshan Wang, an assistant professor and vice chair of research in the Department of Health Information Management at University of Pittsburgh. He has over 10 years of research experience in AI and NLP methodologies and applications in healthcare. His research goal is to leverage different dimensions of data, data-driven computational approaches to meet the needs of clinicians, researchers, and patients. In addition, he is chairing the NLP working group of AMIA this year. So Dr. Yanshan Wang, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mitch, for the kind introduction. So we all know that the healthcare system have widely adopted electronic health record systems, and the size of the EHR data has increased dramatically in the past decades. However, the reality of the EHR is that 80% of the useful information is embedded in unstructured EHR data. So for example, the clinical notes, radiology reports, pathology reports, and only 20% of the useful information is embedded in structured data, such as the demographics, diagnosis, lab results, medications. And the purpose of those structured data is to facilitate administration and billing. So they have several limitations for research. And along with those structured EHR data, there are a lot of knowledge information in the biomedical literature data. They're also free text. So they contain most updated knowledge for healthcare systems and pharmaceutical companies to make decisions and conduct research. Large amount of information in this text data is much more useful for research and healthcare improvement. And therefore, the natural language processing, NLP, is a key technique to uncover the information embedded in the unstructured EHR and use that information to deliver better healthcare and to advance the clinical and translational research. And there are many different NLP tasks. So here is just a subset of different NLP tasks, such as the information extraction, name entity recognition, sentiment analysis, text summarization, and so on and so forth. So for each NLP task, we usually need to use specific training data, testing data, validation data, and build different models. NLP researchers label ourselves as experts for the different NLP tasks and study different approach for different tasks. So there are mainly 4 mainstream paradigms in NLP. So symbolic NLP, developed up to 1980s, use a comprehensive set of rules and keyword-based features to identify the predetermined patterns in text. So that is why it is also called a rule-based NLP. Around 2000, statistical machine learning models such as random forest, simple vector machines, LD, latent directly allocation, becomes popular, and they were applied to solve NLP tasks. And artificial neural networks were also used to solve NLP problems. But since training those neural nets requires so much computing power, so it wasn't until GPU were widely available that researchers have access to. And later, recurring neural networks like RNNs and LSTM, long short-term machines, are used to take a sequence of text data into the training process. Transformer models were introduced in 2017 by a paper from Google entitled "Attention is All You Need." And they are increasingly, become the choice of NLP tasks, replacing those neural networks like RNA and LSTM. Transformer models adopt the self-attention mechanism to differentially weight the different words in the input natural language for specific NLP tasks. So due to the use of self-attention blocks in the encoder and the decoder, the language model becomes larger and larger in terms of parameters. And that leads to the wide use of transfer learning in NLP, so which is the third paradigm for NLP. As the large language models become more common, as one figure showed by Dr. Du in the previous slide, the parameter could be in the size of the buildings right now. So the new NLP paradigm start to emerge in the field, which is usually called generative NLP. The exact date of generative NLP is unknown, but I believe it started from the born of GPT models. And the success of ChatGPT has brought the generative AI and NLP models to people's attention again. So generative AI is not new. It's not a new concept. It is an unsupervised learning for creating new contents that include but not limited to the images, videos, audios, text, and even programming code. So far, there are 2 main frameworks of generative AI. One is a generative adversarial network, GAN, and a generative pre-trained transformer, which is GPT. And a famous example about GAN is that it can generate some face images, but they are fake face images that look like celebrities. And GPT is developed by OpenAI. It is an autoregressive language model trained on the data available on the internet. Given an initial text as a prompt, it will produce text that continue the prompt. So there have been 3 versions of GPT, which is the GPT, GPT-2, and GPT-3. And ChatGPT is believed to be built on GPT 3.5, which is a fine-tuned version of GPT-3 for question answering. And DALL-E 2 or DALL-E is another another generative AI model, which try to build, generate images from a given text, and is also developed by OpenAI. So it can combine concepts in the text to generate more realistic images at a very high resolution. And DALL-E model is a multimodal implementation of GPT-3 with 12 billion parameters and trained on text-image pairs from the internet. And OpenAI believes that these generative AI models will provide a creative solution to almost all machine learning problems and realize, the dream of artificial general intelligence, AGI. And earlier, we talk about the different approaches in NLP. We talk about, to solve those different NLP tasks, we need to annotate different data, right? The annotation and NLP algorithm development may take several months to 1 year. And this is particularly true for medical and clinical domain because we cannot use crowdsourcing, this kind of technique that was used in the general NLP domain to solve the clinical NLP problem. And we have to hire internal expertise and people with medical background to annotate the data, to train the data. So which is really time consuming, need a lot of labor. So in the following, I will use examples to show how ChatGPT and how the generative NLP model will tackle those biomedical and clinical NLP tasks. So this example shows how I used ChatGPT for clinical name entity recognition, NER. So name entity recognition, or NER, seeks to locate and classify name entities mentioned in the unstructured text into some predefined categories. So for example, names, locations, and so on. And the left example is family history NER. So by using this, a simple prompt, extract family member and family condition from the following note, ChatGPT is able to extract the family members with associated age and conditions. And just for your information here, I have to disclose that this note is from MT samples, which is a public data set. It's not a note from our institution. And in the right example shows a phenotype extraction, and ChatGPT could identify the phenotypes mentioned in the note. So if you carefully design your prompt, the output will become more computable. So for example, you can ask ChatGPT to generate output in JSON format or in a CSV format, which is more computable for downstream applications. So this is an example of ChatGPT for clinical relation extraction. Relation extraction is a task of predicting the relationships between those entities that we extracted in the sentences. So here I try to identify drug names and extract the drug-drug interaction from the given text. And this example comes from semi-vol drug-drug interaction extraction share task. As you see, ChatGPT could identify those drug names and identify those interaction between those drugs. So in the conventional NLP methodology, we need to develop separate NLP approaches for drug name identification and interaction recognition, the relation extraction. So, but in ChatGPT, it becomes much straightforward using this prompt. And ChatGPT could also be used for clinical note de-identification, so which is usually viewed as a name entity recognition task. And again, this note is, I made up this note. It's not a real world note. So as you see, ChatGPT could not only identify the PHI information, but also de-identify those information and did identify the node and then generate the identified node in this example. So this is an example for clinical text summarization. And text summarization is an NLP task that involves the process of shortening the text computationally and create a summary that represents the most important information within the original text. So in the left figure, the text is generated by the ChatGPT keeps the semantic meaning, but still, as you see, the text generated by ChatGPT is still very lengthy, not very summarized. So I changed the prompt from the right figure. I changed the prompt to summarizing the following note within 20 words, and then ChatGPT could generate much shorter but more summarized text and keep the semantic meaning at the same time. Systematic literature review are critical important for the clinical and translational research because they help to inform decision-making at various stages of treatment development, from the preclinical research to clinical trials, and also post-marketing surveillance. So this example shows how ChatGPT can assist systematic literature review. So we use the ChatGPT to screen this clinical trial paper and extract the details about the study, such as the disease, cohort description, cohort size, study design type, whether it is cross-sectional study, cohort study, or case control study. So this is how the ChatGPT work and how they can extract all those detailed information just using the different prompts. And the tables from the biomedical literature article can provide a lot of information and rich information, but the information is usually not easy to extract because of the nature of the data. Many of the table, there are images in the article. So sometimes we need to use OCR, optical character recognition technique, to recognize the text and extract the information into the text format so that it's more computable. But OCR usually generate errors and a misalignment for those data elements. And ChatGPT actually can be used to pre-process the output from OCR. And ChatGPT can take those CS content as input, reformat the table, understand the table structure, and understand the semantic meaning of those headers, and then restructure the table and realign, those data elements. And the result seems very promising. And ChatGPT can also be used to analyze the content in social media, news articles. Example on this left is a sentiment analysis using tweets. So this is the example on the left is a misinformation detection in tweets using ChatGPT. And this is another example of sentiment analysis and misinformation detection using the news articles. And in recent years, the real-world evidence has been playing an increasingly fundamental role to monitor post-market drug safety and adverse event. So useful information are usually embedded in clinical notes or the safety report, which are in the free text format. And manually extracting those safety issues and events from those free text has been really time-consuming and very expensive. And this example shows how we can use ChatGPT to identify those post-marketing drug safety issues from the report. And as you see, it could identify those events, clinical events, as well as the associated dates. And of course, writing and designing a research protocol is a very critical step before starting any research projects. So it is also very time-consuming to think about the structure outline and the content that need to be included. But as be trained as a generative NLP model as a nature of ChatGPT, it can help with that and simplify the protocol writing. So that's why using ChatGPT, we can solve all the previous mentioned clinical NLP tasks. So we don't need to develop a different approach for different tasks. We don't need to annotate the different data for different NLP tasks. So maybe if we still need to annotate some small number of data for an evaluation, but we don't need to annotate the data for training the model. So all different NLP tasks now become one task, which is a language generation task, and which is the ultimate goal of generative NLP. And a powerful large language model could fit all those different tasks. As a different, as an NLP, I know this ChatGPT and those generative NLP and AI model has become a game changer for a lot of different tasks.
Thank you, Dr. Yanshan Wang, for a fantastic and thought-provoking presentation. So many thoughts that you've touched upon that we can hopefully talk about as we think about moving beyond the clinical text prompts and what that means for physician and patient dialogue and being able to get deeper into sentence structure analysis. And so it is my great pleasure to present our final speaker, who will be sharing her unique perspective on digital innovation strategies and solutions with large language models and beyond ChatGPT, the future of generative AI for digital innovations. And so Dr. Xiaoyan Wang, Chief Scientific Officer at Melax Tech. Dr. Wang is a leader with a track record of driving innovations and transforming healthcare with data intelligence, and has been recognized for development of NLP platforms and translational research in various areas, including oncology, immunology, and cardiovascular, among many others. Dr. Wang has previously served as Vice President of Biopharma Solutions at Semaphore and GeneDx, and has worked as a faculty member and principal investigator at the University of Connecticut. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Wang.
Thank you so much, Mitch, for the nice introduction. In the next couple of minutes, I will share you a couple of solutions, strategies possibly enabled by ChatGPT or any of the other generative NLP technologies. So focus on three areas. The first one being real-world evidence journeys powered by GPT technologies. The second is a systematic literature review. The last one is being clinical trial optimization. Let's start with clinical notes. In the world of NLP, oftentimes we're facing millions of clinical. Ideally, you want all those information to be extracted meaningfully and structured, normalized, encoded with standard terminologies. So the challenges always are, can you do it with accuracy and at scale? So traditionally, we always start by search through original notes, then sample some of those for annotation to get domain experts' understanding, and then teach our machine to learn. So the machine will feedback on those, get all those normalized and structured, and then it can be used for downstream analysis. So now with ChatGPT, I showed very nice examples. So here I'm showing a couple of ones from clinical notes. On the left panel, you can see this is a clinical notes from lung cancer patients, which carries quite some of the characteristics of that patients on the disease progression, trajectory, or treatment or procedures. So now with prompt engineering, you can get all those entities and also the dates associated with them extracted easily. This is another example coming from pathology notes. So again, this is carry a lot of text and information. So it can be really readily extracted with prompts. If you do it properly, you can get all those entities with the proper value. It's not perfect, but then you can post engineering it and then fits for your analysis again. So in the past couple of years, we've been focused on developing the platforms for real-world evidence journeys. So in two dimensions, the first one is being depth. So for every patient, we can track the patient from the time he or she was born and then follow up all the disease symptoms, conditions, and all that to the time triggers the screening for the patient, then biomarker testing, the patient get diagnosed. Even after diagnosis, you can track the patients on the disease progression and the treatment outcomes. So that is a depth we can go powered by NLP. Another dimension is scalability. So now this technology can be extended to multiple health systems on millions of patients at one time. So both dimensions of depth and breadthness are covered using the technology. Next, I'll move to the systematic literature review session. So the value of systematic literature review is very significant in different areas. So the first one being knowledge base. Once it's created, so you can use it to research any gaps in your field of interest or generate a hypothesis. The second is you can really summarize all the existing data and outcomes for your each interest and then get all the evidence synthesized at one time. The third one, of course, is required by FDA for the regulatory submissions. So those are important values for the systematic literature reviews. However, there are major challenges here in the current process. The first one being it's very labor intensive because think about there were tons of the literatures available for manual process. And then because it's manual, so to error is human, so it's easily to get error prone. And traceability is now recently FDA published their new guidance, the traceability. They want all the information to be able to trace back to the source and the path where it comes from. So which is very hard to achieve by the manual process. The last one is up to date. It's very hard to keep it updated with, rapidly growing literature. The volume is huge to do it manually. So with all that challenges, so let's review. So what is the traditional systematic literature review process? On the left panel here, you can see, so always it started with the protocol specifications, and then go through screening the literature abstract, and then full text, got the data element extracted, and then ending with the summarization of all the data. So that process can break down into different kinds of NLP tasks. For example, task one could be a classification problems. You can really screening all different articles. The task two can be a very typical information extraction NLP problems. So this seems a very natural fit. However, there are new challenges for that approach. Traditionally, if we're doing the fine-tuning approach, so major challenges here are, firstly, the SLR needs are very diverse. So your interests of the disease are different, your compound are different, and even in the same disease space, your requirements are different. So even with the same disease, the same business goals, but the business's target actually change from time to time. And also it's very hard to do the living because it's fine-tuning. So always you need more time to make it living and fully automatic. Lastly, so it's actually quite costly to define a very implemented fine-tuning task. In the clinical trial literature, as you can see, so if it's documented in the abstract or in any kind of text, you can get all those variables, clinical trial design, and also the cohort, the endpoint measures, outcomes can be extracted. So as an end-to-end solution, now we actually can start with all the source text as literature, manning through hundreds, thousands, or millions of those if you have those volume. So now all those information can be extracted and summarized in the dashboard we're showing here. So next one, I'm going to move to the clinical trial optimization using the GPT technologies. So generally, it takes about 10 to 15 years or average $1 or $2 billion to design a new drug from the time it's screened and then to it's approved. Among which clinical trial takes about half of the life cycle, and it's actually very expensive as well. However, the successful rate of clinical trials are very low, ranging from 5% to 26%, and average-wise is 10% of successful rate. Why is that? So there are numerous studies indicating about 80% of the time. So it's very hard to get patient enrolled on time. So another study shows 30% of those times. So it's actually very hard to get the clinical trial acute that way. So simply, so the clinical trial optimization is not properly done. So there are quite some of the market actually available or technology available to solve those problems, but they're still not well done. Fundamental problem is we actually don't know how to optimize clinical trial design and also execution. So we basically laid out here on 3 solutions. The first one being we process thousands of those clinical trials and structure that into a knowledge base, which is available for the trial designers at the first step. Then we can provide the linkage between knowledge base and the real world data for the designers to simulate and play with it and then get the optimized data. Thirdly, we can actually, because now the knowledge base and the real world data are linked, we can actually help them for the recruitment. So those are some of the examples or experiments we have done. As you can see on the left end with a big chunk of text of inclusion. So now with GPT technologies, we can get that processed as structured as you can see. So it's actually, we can use the prompts to specify the types. It's inclusion, exclusion, and the entities, demographics, lab text, biomarkers, then attribute with its values, and also modifiers if there are any conditions with it. Similarly, we can do that for the exclusion text, as you can see here. I won't go through the details here. So now to summarize for this session, so basically, again, we start with ton of the text, and then we process that into structured knowledge base and link to real world data, as you can see here. So every trial with ID and a link to the patients, then you can easily to find how many patients in your database are eligible for the trials you're designing. So it can be used for trial optimization or programmatic trials. So by far, I think 3 of us have been showing you on the technology end how it's evolved to where we are, and we showed you all the possible utilities, the experiment we've done. So I think the next question would you probably interested in you how I can use it, and also what's the future ahead of us. So before that, I like to go through a couple of limitations and then challenges. So the first one is being really the misinformation, because the data, the model itself is not particularly optimized in biomedical domain. So the knowledge could be limited. For example, showing here is it does not know MO terminologies, which is widely used in healthcare. The other area is a very famous one. It's called AI hallucinations. It makes up stuff. Example I'm giving here is I asked it to produce a paragraph of CAR-T in multiple myeloma treatment with the reference. It actually made up one paper as a reference for me. Other challenges, including, of course, transparency, because the data and the model are not open to the public. So we don't know what data actually embedded in the model. That causes a lot of biases, political agenda, and all the other possible biases it has. Another one is security. So someone can purposely do a prompt attack. There was a lot of examples I've been showing on the public social media on this. So another one is originality, because right now I think there are a lot of discussions in the journals on authorship and also plagiarism, and also how we differentiate the text from language models or from a real person. There are quite some of those discussions going on. The paper published just a few days ago, they actually surveyed about 80 people on their concerns and risks, biases related to ChatGPT. Here's a summary table. As you can see, it ranges on different areas in terms of technology itself and the legal and all the other ends. So with all that, so let's come to the question is, how can I use the technology? Here is the summarization we put together here. So basically, based on all our experiments in the last couple of months, I think we can recommend this here. So for all the tasks involved in the information extraction, so we feel you can just go with the confidence. There are weaknesses here, but you can actually do it at your own end, such as terminology mapping, etc. So in the area of knowledge generation, you can still go in most of the cases, but to do it with a caution and do your own check, misinformation, and also hallucinations. Last one is any decision-making tasks. So there are limitations on this right now. So use with greater caution and do your own check. But we believe lots of those tasks actually can be automatically done if you use it properly. So as Jinchen and Yanshan showed earlier, so there are actually, even ChatGPT probably is the only one made it to the public domain. Now it's so very well known, but there are a lot of, generative NLP large language models available, as you can see here. So we believe better systems are coming. So there won't be just one, there are going to be many of those on the way. So here I listed a couple of, very interesting applications of ChatGPT in different user cases here. Toolformer, which is very interesting. They actually use the language model to instruct the calculator to compute stuff. So it's a toolformer. So another one, they actually try to explore using the ChatGPT in the clinical setting to do some decision making. So there are a lot of discussions in high-profile journals like Lancet I show here, and also a couple of others, tax and the different kind of discharge summaries or tax classification, tax summarization, etc. So the last one I'm showing here is the paper just published last week. They basically says they actually did a cognitive test for ChatGPT, showing that, based on the cognitive test, the ChatGPT shows the logic and the reasoning like 9-year-old children. So this is my last slide here. I think by far we can conclude it is that so ChatGPT or any kind of language models behind it, it is a breakthrough for NLP and for digital innovation. If we really understand our data, we can use the technology properly and inject it with biomedical knowledge. We can get cheaper, better, and systems. So we believe, the better system are coming on its way.
Thank you, Dr. Xiaoyan Wang. That was, again, a stellar and fascinating discussion. I believe that we have some polling questions while we kick off the discussion. Please feel free to snap that into your QR code if you want to take part in the poll. Thank you to all of our panelists today. And the recording of this session today will also be on the MELX website. So thank you all. It was a real pleasure, fascinating discussion, and we are just getting started. So upwards and onwards, everyone. Thank you.